and all my controls got minimized and I couldn't see my mute button, so my apologies. So welcome to the Superintendent Coffee. My name is Mark Shores. I'm the Superintendent of Ridgewood Public Schools. Very happy to be here, very proud to be here. With me is Christine Corliss, our Public Information Officer, and we also have our Director of Human Resources, Mrs. Jamie Murphy. Thank you both for being here. And for all of our participants, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I know this is a very busy time of year, and although it's a little chilly day, it is a beautiful day. And I appreciate you taking the time to chime in with us. For those of you who might be new to the Superintendent Coffee, the purpose of our meetings here is to have an interface opportunity with our community members. That's something that's convenient for everyone. So our team, we're all connecting with you from our homes, and I hope that you're able to connect with us from your homes too, in a circumstance and a condition that works really well for you. The goal is to be conveniently available, but to have some really meaningful conversations. We also are being joined right now, I can see on our message here, we also have our Business Administrator and Board Secretary, Ms. Julie Cott as well. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Cott. So tonight we are going to follow our common we're going to follow our common pattern, whereby what we do is provide a handful of updates from the district's perspective, from the board perspective, so that community members can have a sense as to just kind of where we are in the school year and what some of the salient issues and topics are that we're talking about. And then we'll open up for a question and answer period where we want to hear from you. So this is a great time for you to be able to ask questions, for you to be able to give comments. We can engage with you directly. We can have as much dialogue as we need to. We can be here and talk for as long as we need to. Unlike a board meeting where you're capped at a certain number of minutes, here we can just speak quite freely. And of course, because there's no official business being conducted, we don't have the same rules and regulations that we have for a normal board meeting. Typically, our board members are with us. I believe we have a few right now. I haven't actually opened up the participant group yet, but I'm sure that we do. And in the meantime, I would like to go ahead and kind of get us started so that we can have some good conversation. So tonight, what we're going to do is focus on a couple of board and district updates, but we're going to really focus on the 24-25 budget update. This is budget season, so the preliminary budget has been struck. We had a meeting last month. Here, go with that. We had a meeting on March 18th to approve the preliminary budget. And that budget set the tax levy. We did set a 2% increase on the tax levy. In order to do that, with considering all the rising inflationary costs, we had to get very judicious and sharpen our pencils with respect to all the budgeting that we do throughout the district. So we are expecting some tighter budget times ahead, but for the time being, we were able to keep our tax levy increase at 2%, despite the fact that we do qualify for various adjustments to go over that 2%. It's been important to the board that we stay at that 2%. We certainly want to be respectful of the taxpayer. And so that's where we are right now. We are going to signal that we do foresee in the future some additional fiscal tightening. We have been able to enjoy significant state aid correction over the last 10 years or so, or 7 years or so. But this is the last year going into 24-25 where we'll have our final correction. And then from that point on, we will not necessarily see any increases in state aid, and we could theoretically see cuts in state aid depending on any additional changes that are made to the funding formula. So, but for now, we're not talking about any significant changes to our programs. April 29th, which is Monday, will be our final budget presentation, and that will be the time and place at which we will finalize the budget and be set for next year. But for now, our budget has been approved by the Department of Education, and we are proceeding, expecting to present and to vote and to pass the budget on April 29th. So if you want to be a part of that, if you have questions for the board or any comments you want to share with the board too, you can always, of course, feel free to join them there. So you can go ahead and join us on Monday night. But I want to put another topic on your radar. This is an important update because this pertains to the work that we've been doing recently, and that is that we've been working quite hard at organizing all the data that we have available to us to provide to you, the community members, and anyone who's interested, a State of the Schools address for Ridgewood Public Schools. We've obviously had some pretty serious transitions over the last few years with respect to the leadership of the schools. And over the course of that time, we've had some varying data presentations through state assessments and through some different surveys, but we're aiming to create a more comprehensive look at how our schools are performing. I've been doing this. I'd been doing this in my prior district for, I think I think we did full 6 addresses. So we did one for every year that I was there. It was something we launched in the first year. And the goal was to create a common starting point, a common understanding of where we are. So that way, when we as a community work together to try to improve our students, try to help our students and improve the outcomes of our schools on behalf of our students, that we have a common understanding as to what our starting point is. So that way we can streamline some of our conversations about where we need to be going and how we need to get there. So there's really 2 key components to this. The first is basically a performance analysis. So I listed rankings and ratings here because that overlaps with a lot of the data that we're going to look at. And I know that many folks do use those rankings and rating systems to try to gauge the quality of schools, especially when they're purchasing a home. So I know that for anyone who's a homeowner, particularly, but also anyone who's vested in the school community, probably has some interest in how we look to outsiders as well in terms of those rankings and ratings. So we're in the process of evaluating them at this time, and we will give a comprehensive analysis of those systems. To balance out the rankings and ratings, we'll also do some of our own analysis of the state data. We'll also look at some of the other data points that are included in those analyses, which are not limited to, but include SAT scores, graduation rates, attendance, post-secondary enrollment, things like that. To round out all of that performance data, which is so typically which is quite redundant between the school's performance reports, our data analyses, and the rankings and rating systems, we're also administering surveys. This is another technique that I've used again in my prior district to help provide greater insight regarding why things might look the way that they look in our performance outputs. So we have completed a survey for students. So we gave students in grades 6 to 12 the survey. We had a 74% participation rate. So that's, as far as survey standards go, that's pretty good. I think I think in the future we can push that a little higher, but I'm pretty happy with that result. And in grades 3 to 5, we had an 86% participation rate. So that's pretty solid also. So we're looking forward to it. So we've already begun crunching some of that information. Our tech team is doing some really good work so that we can have some good data visualizations for everyone to understand at a glance and in a way that's user friendly how our students are experiencing our schools. We also did faculty surveys. They're a little different than the student surveys. They're going to go out today, and we provided parent surveys, we will be providing parent surveys, which we anticipate sending next week. As far as these surveys are concerned, student surveys, if you're interested, if you haven't been following along, our student surveys were developed over the course of the summer. We started with some surveys that I had used in my prior district, but also we brought in some new imperatives that we had as a district. We asked some representatives, our parent community, as well as our faculty and our administrators to kind of brainstorm what are some core questions that we want to answer that we have, particularly for Ridgewood, that we can maybe develop some items for the students to complete that might inform our ability to answer those questions. So, for example, one of those questions was, we wondered, to what extent do students feel a strong sense of identity as part of the Ridgewood public school systems, or do they rather just feel siloed to their school? So we actually formed a Likert scale item where we basically made that statement and asked students to agree, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree to that statement. And so we're hoping that we'll gain some insights regarding the extent to which our students feel like they are a part of a community, or that Ridgewood Public Schools are a community, or that their school is just a community. So it's been really great to kind of check out some of those results early, and we look forward to sharing further as we get to the State of the Schools address. For anyone who might be concerned about student privacy in those surveys, the data is anonymous. It's been anonymized. So it was collected confidentially, and then it was anonymized, meaning that we deleted all indicators of all student indicators with that. We also wanted to make sure that we were very thorough with respect to anyone's concerns about students' rights and pertaining to survey participation. There weren't any questions on there that triggered our policy and state law regarding the need for affirmative consent. Nevertheless, we did ask for affirmative consent. So in the summer packet, when parents filled those out, they were asked to consent to their child taking these surveys. Again, there's nothing in these surveys that would trigger that, but nevertheless, I know that this is a sensitive topic. I know that many, many years ago here in Ridgewood, there was actually a landmark case that influenced the way the state law is today. And I wanted to make sure that we paid absolute respect for parents' rights in that respect. So we're on our way with that. The faculty surveys and the parent surveys we use different committees for. Those surveys are a little bit different. We ask some similar questions, but obviously there are questions for faculty members that we're not asking students, and there's questions for parents that we're not asking students or faculty. But I will say the parent questions do have some pretty tight overlap with some areas of the student survey, because we also care about parents' perceptions about how their kids are experiencing school as well. So we look forward to sharing all that. So if you don't have March 16th on your calendar, please do. We will have an in-person meeting. It will be in the Education Center at the 3rd floor where we have our board meetings. We'll have a little bit of a different layout because it won't be a board meeting. So we'll have a little bit more open seating. Everyone's welcome to come in person, but we will live stream it just as we do board meetings. So you should be able to participate purely from the comfort of your home or on a phone, wherever you are. You can ask questions and engage with us just as you would if you were in person as well. So don't feel like you have to be there. But of course, if you'd like to be in person, we are going to make that accommodation. All right, I just said a bunch, but one of the things I'm going to do is jump into a little rundown of the budget presentation. But I wanted, before I did that, I wanted to just give a chance for Mrs. Corliss, Mrs. Murphy, or Ms. Cott to add to anything that I just shared. All right, great. Well, then let's go ahead. I wanted to share the budget presentation. So if this coffee presentation is available on the website, but you can also see the budget presentation on the website. So if you go to presentations under the, actually, let's just do this together real quick. So if you go to district home and you go to our district and you go to board presentations, you click there, then you can access the 23-24 school year, and you can access the preliminary budget review. So click there, and there you go, you can see that document. So I'm going to work from this one particularly here. So we already gave this presentation. If you want to see the original presentation in its full detail, you can do that by going onto our YouTube channel. So again, this is our March 18th meeting, and you can just scroll your way through and find where we give the presentation. It's towards the beginning of the meeting. I think we honor some folks, have some presentations for students and all that at the beginning, but you can cruise past that if you don't want to, if you want to get right to the budget presentation. As I already said, our emphasis was to share that we really worked hard to keep everything under a 2% tax levy while maintaining all of our current programs, and that's effectively what we've done. We talked about our budget process. It really was very much a zero-based budget process. Ms. Cott worked with her business office colleagues to work with all the different budget managers within the district to make sure that all of their requests were rooted in actual identifiable lines. And of course, we have studied all of our major account drivers as well. And so we've really created a pretty tight budget, tighter than we've probably experienced in some time. As far as enrollment trends, right now our enrollment trends seem to be a little bit on the decline. This is part of a national trend, we know. The extent to which Ridgewood will continue to see declining enrollment is difficult to say. We certainly know that property is pretty locked up right now. There's not a lot of movement in housing, so there could be some impact there. But the fact is that this is something that we're going to continue to monitor, as this is part of a global trend, or a national trend, excuse me. As far as our program objectives, as we said before, we wanted to maintain our programs, but there are some things that we are progressing with. So we are progressing with an ELA overhaul, where we're really shifting emphasis towards making sure that we are doubling down on those areas that are known to be scientifically practices that really improve student literacy. We have had many of these practices in place, but we are really making it our imperative to ensure that we are fully aligned with the full science of reading. So, and this is, science of reading is a bit of a trendy term right now. It's something that we talk about a lot. There's some concern among some education folks that we sometimes have, sometimes we get so caught up in words that we go down paths that sometimes lead us left of center, and then we have to, and the pendulum kind of swings back. So So we're being mindful that we are not dismantling any practices that are really of value, but rather we're just always pruning and making sure that we're maximizing our time to be as fruitful as possible for our students. And that's true across all subjects. So for example, if you jump a couple bullets down on the right-hand side there, we also have supports and program development for the implementation of a K-5 social studies curricular initiative. The reality is that that's also closely tied to language arts as well, because there's a considerable amount of reading and writing, of course, in social studies work, but also there's a great deal of content knowledge, and it's really important for students to have strong understanding of the world around them and lots of context so that when they're reading and when they're writing, they have a strong base of information and understanding of their world around them to be able to write from, and that they're also literate with respect to resources and getting information that they need to be able to write well and to understand what they're reading. So those two really very much go together. But even in that, we're looking at a new program that can help us to do that more efficiently. Obviously, we only have so many hours in the school day, and efficiency is important. We're also moving forward with with math manipulatives, making sure that we're using a multisensory approach to both language arts and math. And although it's not listed on here, we're also going to be talking about in the next couple of months our evaluation of our secondary sequence, secondary math sequence, which we have not made an official announcement about yet, but we have been evaluating whether or not we are going to return to a more traditional approach. For those of you who don't know, we have been using a geometry first approach, and we've not necessarily been seeing outputs that align with I think what had been hoped that would accomplish. We also have identified that we really would like to reevaluate our gifted and talented programming. So although there's not a specific budget line for this particularly, we do have allocations within our curriculum and instruction budget lines to ensure that we're making progress in complying with the new law that started in 2020. It's very important to us that we make sure that our students who are on the very high end of the curve are making sure that all their needs are being met. And so we'll be providing more information about what that means in the coming months. We have some new courses as well. That's pretty standard, right? We always kind of introduce some new courses. We might close some from time to time too if they're losing popularity, but these are ones that we hope are going to be very well received. So we've got some creative courses such as real estate and economics and politics, which is about teaching economics and politics through real estate. So that's a really interesting course that's being proposed locally. But we're also signing on for some more commonly understood courses like AP African American Studies, which is a new AP offering that just it's new in general, but it would be new for us as well. We're excited to bring that in as part of our effort to be more inclusive school district and to broaden our curriculum. But you can see that we have some cybersecurity, obviously, is very timely. There's arts offerings as well. And we've also identified that our middle school students could benefit from some additional support as they transition to middle school. So we're offering a middle school 101 course. And then if you're interested in the numbers, this is where they are. You might notice some difference. I think Ms. Cott I'll give her a chance to speak. I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about how some of the lines, if you're trying to track from one year to the next, one of the things that Ms. Cott and her team did was really resolve a lot of confusion within the budget in terms of which lines were allocated for which purposes. Unfortunately, we did find that there were many lines that were not, many funds were budgeted into lines that weren't necessarily intuitive. So I'm trying to say that as diplomatically as possible, but I think that we've now really budgeted the funds as they're within the many thousands of budget lines as they really are appropriate to be done, and many of those lines have been recoded. Since we're on expenses and expenditures, Ms. Cott, did you want to say a few words here?
I don't want to go into the full regalia here, but absolutely, you're correct. There was some modification to account codes to make them comport with what is required by the State Department of Education. So it is making, for this particular year, for the 24 or 25 budget year, this will be sort of a starting baseline for us for the future to look at trends. We cannot do a very serious comparison of these exact codes to prior years because of this movement in coding, but this will be our baseline, a very solid baseline for moving forward and being able to see those trends as we develop future budgets.
Well said. Thank you. So we had a few slides here to just paint a few pictures for you. So if you're not familiar with how school budgets work, you know, we think about schools and we look at schools and we call schools schools, but the reality is that the majority of the cost of a school is in the people. So really, a school is the people in it. So the majority of our costs are a function of employee benefits and salaries, and that's just important to know if you're not familiar with that. We also, though, have many buildings and they're very expensive to maintain, but everything we're trying to do with all of our other funds only fits into this 26.8% of our budget. Sources of revenue, you know, we have local revenues, we have state revenues, we have some federal revenues, and then there are a variety of other revenues. We collect some tuition for some for in-district programs, obviously rents. We do earn interest on capital. We have some fees. Extraordinary aid is a different type of aid that's provided by the state towards the end of the year that we budget for separately. We also have our own reserve accounts where we introduce funds from time to time, where we keep funds, but we then introduce them to the budget to be able to fund other projects. For this year, it's important to note, as I said before about tightening, we are actually relying on withdrawals from maintenance and emergency reserve to fund a significant portion of this budget. Those are limited funds that we will run out of. So again, we want to signal in this process to everyone that we are heading towards tighter budgetary times. If you're not familiar with how schools are funded in New Jersey, they're typically funded by based on state funding is determined based on basically the economics of the community. So a community like ours does not receive a great deal of state aid compared to many other communities. And so as a result of that, almost 80% of the funding is from local taxpayers. That's homeowners and local businesses. There's a breakdown of those other revenues if you're interested. And it's important to note that when we look at the capital here, those are also reserve funds. So those are funds that were set aside from prior budget years. Fund balance is the same thing. That's from prior budget years. That's balance that's being carried over from year to year and sometimes and being reintroduced from being produced by 1 year and then reintroduced in another year. We do have a couple of significant capital expenditures. I know there had been some talk some years ago about a referendum project, and then that was kind of taken off the table. And I know some folks get excited about referendum. Some people get really anxious about referendum. We're not at a place where we're talking about a referendum right now, but we are trying to get a handle on where we are with our facilities. And in the meantime, the district has been quite responsible in trying to make sure that we are able to get as many funds as possible from the state. So one thing that the district did last year was submit ROD grant applications. ROD stands for Regular Operating District, which means just regular public school districts are eligible for these grants, where we basically apply to say, hey, listen, we have this money on hand, we can pay for this project. It's a really essential project like an HVAC system, and we'd like the state to pay their share. So when they're approved, the state will then agree to pay their 40% share. So that's not entirely on the taxpayer. The state will pony up as well. So we are able to withdraw funds. I think some of these numbers are going to be slightly adjusted in the final budget presentation, but the district has set aside funds to knock out improvements to the HVAC systems at Glenn, at Ridge, and at Ridgewood High School. So, as we talk about future something that's important with regard to these facilities projects, that the district stays responsible in trying to engage in preventive maintenance and chipping away at some of these major items. And then our estimated tax impact. Again, this isn't exactly how the tax is calculated, but this is how we generally estimate it. We take the average assessed home value, which is $710,000, and then we calculate out the 2% increase on that tax obligation. That would give you a general sense. A general sense of how this might impact you. So for the average assessed home at 2%, the increase would be about $215 a year, or $18 a month, or 60 cents a day. And if you just looking to roughly calculate that, you can just look at $100,000 of assessed. For every $100,000 of assessed value, your tax increase is $254 a month. Again, the actual calculation works a little different because the ratables are taken into account, and it differs from year to year, so there can be some fluctuation. But again, that's a good way to estimate what the impact would be. Ms. Scott, did you want to round out anything else that I just shared?
I think you did a great job, Mark. I think you hit all the highlights.
All right. Well, and if anybody's interested in hearing more, we got a meeting on the 29th where we're going to get into it again in detail. Right, let me close this out. I'm gonna lost my presentation there. So I'm going to just stop my share for a second. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my notes, and we're going to go ahead and start a question and answer at this point in time. So if you're interested, if you have a comment or a question or anything you want to share with us, we'd love to hear from you at this time. If you've got a little hand raise button, you should be able to press that button, and we'll be able to join you. Don't worry, we're not going to see your people. No one's going to see your picture. It's just going to be your voice. But if you have a question, you'd like to just raise your hand, and Mr. Emore will invite you in, and we'd love to hear. We have someone. We have the name Harut.
Yes.
Are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes. Hi. I'm new to Ridgewood, and I have a 14-year-old daughter that's going to be joining Ridgewood High School in September. So
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted to know if there was, anything. I went online to start the registration process. I haven't submitted everything, but I'm just getting all the information together. Aside from the basic registration online, is there anything else I should be aware of?
Well, I would say you definitely want to just get started with that registration process. As you engage with the school and you engage with their offices, we'll share a bunch of information with you. If you're interested, it depends upon what you're particularly interested in. I mean, there's a wealth of information on the website. I think it can be a little overwhelming at times. Is there a specific area? Are you interested in understanding the schools better? Are you interested in, is there anything specific?
I guess in general, my daughter's been going to a small private school, and now, this will be her first experience in a public school system. And I'm just curious to know how do they do assessments, whether do AP classes start in the freshman year? Do they start in the sophomore year? How do the students get placed?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't delay. I would get registered now, and we can get your daughter set up with a guidance counselor and get the scheduling process started. So they're scheduling right now at the high school, and the sooner that she's participating in that process, the better. So they'll be asking you for past records, and they'll use those records, and of course work with you as parents and with your child as well to make sure that we're getting exactly the right placement.
Okay, and they start that as soon as now in April for September?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what their protocol is for new enrollees, but right now we're building the master schedule. So I would touch base with the high school and make sure that you're getting your registration work in now. And if they have specific process that they'd like you to go through, follow their lead. Just so you know, I'm also I'm a little new to the district myself. I started in July. So I don't want to tell you something that's and actually everybody here is fairly new as well. So I would recommend that you work directly with the high school, and they're going to give you the best guidance. But in general, high school schedules are built in the spring, and so I don't see a reason why you wouldn't be able to get your process started now.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, may I chime in for 1 minute to help Mr. Harut
Sure.
a little bit? Mr. Harut, if you go to the website and go to the high school site, there's a link under our school to the guidance website. And there you'll get a lot of information on the program of studies and the scheduling process and the specific guidance counselors and such to contact. That may help you get an idea of the course offerings at grade level.
Okay. I mean, I'm assuming it's still like when I went to high school, like you have a certain number of courses that you have to take and then electives.
Correct.
Right. And
Yeah.
the program of studies that's on that guidance website will absolutely outline that for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Welcome to Ridgewood.
Thank you. Likewise.
And next we have Mr. Mullen. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So I'm going to bring up my note here. So I brought up a couple things during the board meeting, and sorry, I'm still used to asking certain things on the board meeting and not always here. And because there wasn't this forum before. But I do have a higher level question to begin with. Is one of the items that we discussed when we first met was when they were they had the discussions with stakeholders, which they called at that point. It was what are you looking for in a superintendent? And one of the things that I thought that was important was to basically dismantle the budget and re-put it together. Because what we needed 10 years ago is not necessarily what we need today. And the answers we would hear of, well, that's what was there, so we need to keep it, was not necessarily appropriate, not just because of COVID, but just because of evolution of many things. And so was curious from you and Ms. Cock, what you learned through the budget process. Were there any things that were substantially deficient? Anything that was substantially overallocated in that? And not sure if this is front running to any of your presentation at the board meeting, or if you're able to discuss these items, but wanted to ask that larger question. Like, I know one of the things I brought up a few times, where I guess it was a year or so ago, was about gym. There wasn't enough physical education at the lower levels, and there was more than needed at the upper levels. And how was that going to get corrected? Obviously, languages were an issue. Are we now sufficient in regards to languages? And does it seem like that we're going to be sufficient moving forward? Those are just examples. Sorry, I'm going to ask Mike, just so they're out there. The other items were just intramurals. I brought up intramurals at the board. That one I brought up on the board on purpose because there was interest and there were actually discussions by the board in regards to intramurals. I know you were looking into that as an option, and I mentioned it was something that there seemed to be interest in the community, at least from conversations I've had. And the last was water. If there were any water solutions that are going to be introduced in this budget.
I'm just taking notes, Mr. Malton. So
yeah, sorry, I know that was a lot.
No, that's okay. So do we learn anything in the budget process? Are we compliant with our minutes in world language and PE now? And then it was intramurals and water.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll take a couple of those. So with respect to our minutes of compliance with world language and PE, we are compliant now. So at our elementary levels, both for physical education and world language, students do get an appropriate, well, there's not a minute requirement in world language, but there's a minute requirement in phys ed, and we are meeting that minute requirement. With respect to world language, we do have dedicated teachers who I believe are at this point meeting our obligation to meet the state standards for world language instruction. It was part of when we did our last CUSAC process last year, which is the NJDOE review of our systems and programs. Those were things that they brought to our attention, and we were asked about regarding whether we needed a corrective action plan. And when I reported back to them and explained the actions that the district had taken, they were very pleased, and they felt as though that they were sufficient. We'll obviously be continuously reevaluating that. We'll have another CUSAC review in another year or two. We'll hear from them directly, but for right now, I know as far as other school districts are concerned, as far as the standards are concerned and the minutes are concerned, I believe that we are compliant fully.
Great.
With respect to intramurals, we did talk about this a little bit. I think well, we've talked about it a pretty good amount. There doesn't seem to be a pretty significant cost with respect to intramurals, so we don't have any particular budget line. Rather, this is something that is relatively low overhead. We have the materials on hand. We do apparently have some levels of intramural activities at the middle schools. I'll let somebody else talk about that if they know more about that. And I learned that. I think what we were really talking about, and I think we've talked about this before too, Mr. Mullen, is really talking about the high school, by the high school level, kids who maybe want to be involved but aren't necessarily at that like peak level of in any one specific sport. And so they might not have any one place to go, but they can still play and enjoy themselves. So if that's how you remember it too, what we're looking at doing is assessing the interest of students to do that type of thing, and then what our facilities are available, and then then paying a stipend is something that we can certainly manage within the budget. But first, we need to figure out need, space availability, and interest in terms of what we would offer. So you probably know the board wanted to memorialize this as a goal of theirs because it involves supporting kids. So this is something we're going to be looking at trying to figure out for the fall.
I would say it's not where my kids are elementary, I guess now middle also, but it was really at all levels. Something I again, just in conversations with other parents, and I ran like a little softball, baseball thing during COVID for various kids of different ages and genders. It was very interesting via, especially that experience was how much we had a dozen kids, and the majority of them were intimidated by the sports programs in this town. And it's not building the confidence and the teamwork, the physical education, because they're almost shut out unless at the age of 8 you want to do 4 days a week of a sport. And and that's not what a lot of us grew up with. So there's actually some pushback in the town from what I've heard, that people are like, this is ridiculous. And at an early age, so they're looking for alternatives. But also it's about the kids, that they're not really able to participate as much, that even rec, like if somebody doesn't play rec baseball by the age of 9, they're going to possibly be shut out. Nope, I think we.
Yeah, no, I'm here. Sorry, it was getting dark.
No,
here. Yeah, no, I hear you on that. We do, and again, we do have some. I think that's something that we just need to look at more as part of moving forward and part of our strategies. I think that the surveys are going to speak to this a little bit too, because we asked kids about what kind of activities they're involved in. So these are going to be some good activities as we plan for the fall.
Great.
And then as far as water is concerned, we did make a commitment, and we're staying with that commitment, that we'd like to ensure that we have a water source at each school that has some sort of PFAS, some filtration that can address PFAS. We've had a couple of leads on things. I don't know if we've finalized whether or not those solutions are going to come through. Ms. Cott, I see your face. Do you want to share any? Do you have any updates for us here?
I think as of this afternoon, I am very hopeful that there is a working solution, that we have found a proper filter that will work in a location at each of our schools in the existing water filling stations. So we just need to order those materials and get them in and put them into the units and make people aware that they're there. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Great to hear.
And yeah, and to add to that, I mean, we've been exploring a couple options, and we've been hopeful that we would have a relatively seamless solution that would help us to treat many of our existing systems, so that it wouldn't be limited to one. But again, we are committed to trying to at least get that one. But it's coming down to the logistics and the cost, obviously. If it's as simple as dropping a different filter in, which we've been hopeful that we could do, then we could probably do a bunch of them. But if it involves retrofitting a bottle filling station significantly, that will add up pretty quickly if we try to do more than one in school. So, but we will continue to share that information. Thank you for asking. And then as far as things we learned in the budget process, Ms. Cott, I would of course give you the opportunity to answer that first.
Sure. So I learned a tremendous amount. I think the biggest takeaway was really investigating where the surplus had been created in the prior years, particularly last year. There was a large surplus that we ended with, doing some investigation into what was the basis of that. And I would agree with you, Mr. Moulton. In some cases, I think it was a matter of people had this amount and they added to an amount every year, not necessarily looking at the fact, does that support fully what needs to be accomplished, or is there excess? So we did a deep dive this year looking at prior year trends, going back 2 and 3 years, to look at how much was actually being spent out of those accounts. And again, looking at the accounts themselves, were the proper things being bought out of the account lines? Did they make sense? Did they need to be moved to a different account line? I don't want to call out any particular, department or school or anything like that, but we just learned, and I don't think it was, I think it was a lack of probably supports from the business office and helping people investigate what they really needed and where they could move funds around and better support certain projects and needs better than others. So we certainly did find places where we had excess, but we also found places where we had some shortfalls, and we wanted to shore that up. And by moving funds around, we were able to do that.
Mr. Mullen, how did we do? Was that helpful?
Yes. Great to hear about the water. And in terms of the budget, it's I guess the most important thing is that very happy that you guys are on top of it. And Ms. Cott, you have been fantastic in your position so far. I've said it a number of times, and so again, don't know all the pieces, but I'm sure you understand it well, and they're doing a great job. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And next, I think we have Dr. McKenna.
Hello, everyone. I want to echo two statements that Mr. Moulton just made. One is, I think intramural sports would be wonderful and well received in Ridgewood. And I also wanted to thank Ms. Cott for a really great summary of the budget and just being on top of the numbers. It's been much needed and much appreciated in the community. I also wanted to ask, in higher ed, clearly has been a very tumultuous week at many college campuses, dealing with issues in Israel and Gaza. And our colleges are struggling to figure out how to walk the line between First Amendment issues, having young people use their voice while at the same time respecting other people's religions and personal space. Has this been an issue in Ridgewood, and has it been discussed at all? Is this just a higher ed issue?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, it's been hard to process a lot of the news of what's going on at the university campuses and the challenges that they're facing. So without weighing in on in the higher education world locally, we have been. I think on the whole, we've been pretty blessed to have a generally inclusively minded community that really, where all the parties that I've spoken to, it's not as though we have been without issue, but where all the parties involved really all value mutual respect and a good sense of order in our schools. We have had some acts of anti-Semitism. We have had some acts, some anti-Muslim acts as well, but they've been really on the individual level. And they've really been tied to specific conflicts between students, and they've been handled where we can identify individuals through the HIB process. There's also been some great work in the community. I think we have a really strong interfaith group that I attribute a lot of the peacefulness in Ridgewood to. I think our faith leaders really do a wonderful job, from our local rabbis to our local Muslim leaders to our local church leaders and I don't know everyone involved in the interfaith community, but those are some of the folks I've been talking to the most. And I think that everyone is very committed to mutual respect, while at the same time remaining ardent in their beliefs about world affairs, and particularly the conflict right now in Gaza. So I hope that we can continue to maintain this strong spirit of peaceful, respectful expression. And we have, to be clear, we do have students who have strong opinions on this issue. We don't really get involved unless there's a situation where, again, someone's expression is actually infringing on someone else's rights. But for now, we're staying vigilant, staying close to our kids. And of course, obviously, our classrooms are places where, in the appropriate context and at the appropriate age, students are learning and studying and talking about these topics as well. And I think I hope and I think that because we're creating those spaces, and also our kids are younger, that I think that we're able to navigate right now without these similar types of conflicts. But I can tell you that, should they arise at some point, if I've dealt with student demonstrations before, and I think it's important to support peaceful demonstration of students. Students do have a right to free speech. I mean, Tinker is still relevant. But at the same time, of course, the need to have an orderly operation of the school is also important. But again, working with students as is needed when these types of issues arise is how we would certainly be navigating them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did I speak sufficiently to your
Yeah,
question?
I had no idea if this was an issue in the high schools. I mean, there's been so much on the news this week. I was wondering if it was trickling down into the K to 12 zone, but it sounds like it's not, been a huge issue, which is awesome. And I do credit, the strong leadership of the different religious communities in town. There's no easy answers for how to handle things on the college campuses. And so but I do think that, sounds like we're doing a great job within Ridgewood in terms of letting people, finding that balance between having people express their ideas and, making others feel safe.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. Thank you for joining us, Dr. McKenna. I hope you're well.
Thank you. You too.
We don't have any hands up right now, but I am sure we have some people who have something to share. So if you got a question or concern, please don't be shy. Well, while some of you might be thinking and considering what we might want to ask, I'm going to go around real quick. We had Dr. Fenwick also join us. Dr. Fenwick, you've been sitting in on some of this conversation. Did you have anything that you wanted to share or add?
Sure. And thank you. Sorry, we were having some technical difficulties. I was sitting there, but not on panel, so forgive me. I mentioned at the last board meeting, but I would love to reiterate at this coffee that Unified Electives was recognized and awarded the Innovation of Special Education Award this year by New Jersey school boards and AH. This is, I'm very proud of the high school and the offerings that they are building for students with disabilities. And to get this award, 27 school districts programs were recognized. We've been recognized in the past, but to actually get the award, we're 1 in 4. And that is, says a lot about where we're moving and all of the prideful work that the students and the faculty of the high school are doing. So I'm very proud of them. With regards to the New Jersey Coalition for Inclusive Ed, they partner with New Jersey Department of Ed to collaborate in what's called the NJIP, the New Jersey Inclusion Project. We have partnered and applied and worked through that grant. We have just submitted for next year. So we're awaiting word with a focus on, technical assistance and systemic change applications. So we'll wait and see, but they've worked with us, and I'm fairly confident that they will want to be continuing work with us. And the last thing I think that I was thinking I would want to speak to is the next CPAG sensory friendly dinner, which is at Lisa's Mediterranean Cuisine, and it is coming up Monday, April 29th. So grab some food before you come to the board meeting, I guess. That, and I guess in our department and in child study, if this is usually the time of year where you're having either your last meeting with the child study team and maybe having that last conversation for summer. There are a lot of summer offerings. So in addition to whether or not your student qualifies for extended school year, there is also summer adventure and a ton of other offerings within the village and beyond. So be mindful of, what the team is recommending based on regression, recoupment, and the formula for ESY, but also keeping it student-centered, what the students need, and working alongside with the team for us to come together on what might be a really good fit for your child for summertime. Thank you.
Thank you for all that, Dr. Fenwick.
Sure.
And we also have a comment. We have a question here. It's like from Rachel Higgins.
Hi.
Ms. Higgins, are you with us?
Yes. You mentioned something before about a geometry program or something with the math curriculum that didn't work out as you had expected. Can you explain that a little more, please?
Yeah, sure. So the district moved to a geometry first sequence for secondary math instruction. So the traditional sequence would be, according to state standards, would be that students would take algebra first, algebra 1, then geometry, and then algebra 2. So in Ridgewood, along with a few other districts some years ago, made decision to shift to a geometry first curriculum where effectively students would take their pre-algebra classes up to right before geometry, and then they would take geometry, but they'd have to learn some algebra at the same time as geometry, and then they wouldn't be able to do the highest levels of geometry, so some of the geometry was moved to the algebra 1 class. These changes in the scope and sequence caused difficulty with respect to the students taking the actual state assessment. So the algebra 1 scores have actually not been terrible. They've actually been pretty much flat with some fluctuation. But the geometry scores as a result of this, because the students are taking that in a year before they're taking the test before they've really learned all the content, our scores are significantly lower in geometry. So that's fine if it's just a state assessment, and if it was serving our students significantly better, then that would be fine to have a model that doesn't necessarily comply with what the state says we should do. We don't necessarily have to always be in lockstep with the state. But the problem is that we haven't been able to observe any other distinct benefit of that sequence, except for the fact that students have a little bit of a smoother transition from algebra 1 to algebra 2 because they just finished algebra. So the question is, is it cost benefit analysis? Does the cost outweigh? So we've been working, we've been analyzing this. Ashley Nembo, our supervisor of math for secondary level, has been working with our teachers and analyzing our data. And we're arriving at a place we haven't made an official announcement yet, but it does look like signs are pointing to that we should consider moving back. So we'll be talking about that more clearly in the next couple of weeks. But that's the direction of the conversation.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll just reiterate what one of the previous speakers said about the water fountains at schools. Just from what my kids are reporting to me, that all the filters are red on the water stations. No one wants to refill their water bottle. So hopefully that can get corrected quickly.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. I was not aware of that.
Could you tell us what school?
This was at Orchard and GW.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us, and thanks for joining us tonight. Mr. Moulton. No, we had Mr. Moulton back for a second. Mr. Moulton, are you still with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. The math question prompted me. Have there been discussions as part of curriculum to increase financial literacy starting in at an earlier age and then through high school?
Yes, there have been several conversations about this, but I have not been at the center of these conversations, so I'd have to default to our curriculum area, and Mr. Friedman isn't here, but I could have him circle back with you to talk about where we are expanding that.
That'd be great. It's been, to the point, it's been a big pet peeve of me. We can we can do proof equations, but you don't know if you should take a loan for college or what a credit card is, or do I get a mortgage? So
I hear you. You know, it's funny, actually, some kids wrote that. Some kids actually put that, Ms. Corliss, I think you remember seeing this. Some kids were actually writing that in their comments in the surveys. They were like, why don't we do more stuff like I don't know, like, how do I pay taxes? I don't know. I don't learn that. So they're in middle school, in fairness, and they do learn that in high school. But to your point, it is something the kids are aware of as well.
There's actually a great book about this. Something about it is, I forget the exact title, but something. Yeah, you may not be a financial genius, but how to teach your kids, and it talks about kids at the age of 5, I think maybe even 4, understand some of these basic items, but we don't teach them and encourage them, and it's almost stacked against them in a way.
I agree that this is an area we can always do better. So thank you for your comments. And I do recall, I think you've been talking about this since the first MA.
Quite possibly. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. And we have Ms. Ramos. Hi, Ms. Ramos. How are you? Ms. Ramos, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. My phone was prompting me with stuff. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, great. I wish you had the curriculum director on because I have emailed him and I have yet to receive a response back. We had Eid, and we celebrated that. We had many people in our community celebrated that, and we had the day off. And my son asked me, why do we have the day off? And I explained it to him, like I explained to him why we have Juneteenth off. But then I also am my DEI at BF Middle School, and I was charged of curriculum updates. So I also asked the principal, I included her in the email, that why can't instructors say anything? I think he had one teacher explain why we had off for Eid, and that was it. So is the curriculum director going to make these changes for next school year?
I will have, unfortunately, Mr. Friedman had a family matter that he had to attend to tonight. But specifically, he asked if anybody had any questions or concerns, that he would make contact with them tomorrow or shortly thereafter. So okay. I will pass that on to him and he will reach out to you.
Yes, please, because I did email him. I did include him in the email. Like I said, I'm part of a BFMS DEI committee, and I definitely want to change curriculum. And it's only a sentence about Juneteenth. It's only a sentence about Eid. So I don't understand how we need to change the whole curriculum to include that. But if we have to, better off our children know and make them more aware of other people and their religions and, why we have these days off and why we celebrate them. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, of course. All right, so we're making a note here. Mr. Friedman will reach out to Mr. Moulton and Mr. Ramos. Are there any other questions or concerns from anyone? Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Again, if you're interested in hearing more of the nitty-gritty about the budget, please join us on the 29th, April 29th. That's this Monday. Again, you can always join virtually. You don't have to be in person, although we love having guests at our board offices. And in the meantime, please keep May 16th on your calendar, as that will be our State of the Schools address. We're really looking forward to sharing some good information about how our schools are doing and helping folks make sense of rankings and ratings, and also getting an inside perspective as to how our students are experiencing our schools. So thank you all so much for being here. I'm just going to go around the room real quick. Mrs. Murphy, I don't think you had a chance to talk very much today. Is there anything you wanted to share?
No, I actually just wanted to let everyone know that on this agenda, also Monday night, earlier this month, survey was sent out to, not a survey, announcement was sent out that parents and students and other staff members could nominate teachers and educational services professionals as Teacher of the Year, Educational Services Professional of the Year at their school. So that process went through a committee. All those applications were reviewed. I want to just say thank you for anyone that took the time to recognize someone who was having a positive impact on their child or on their school. And for the students, especially who took the time to write a recommendation for a teacher, a staff member in a building, and that those individuals that were chosen for this school year will be recognized on the agenda this on Monday evening, and then we'll have a separate celebration for them in June, and I'll share that date and the information as we get closer. But congratulations to everyone, and thank you everyone for their participation, and thank you everyone to all of the teachers and educational services professionals that were recognized and for their work.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Ms. Scott, Ms. Corliss?
I would just say, please keep a lookout for the community survey coming in the next couple of weeks. We want as high a participation as possible and look forward to your answers and comments.
Just wanted to give a public thanks to Christine for putting together the budget flyer, the budget mailer that you can find on the website and should be coming to home soon.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you again, Mr. Enmore, who's behind the scenes doing all the tech work here. Look forward to seeing all of you at a meeting again sometime soon, and hopefully in person at a school sometime near the end of the school year, which is coming up on us fast. Be well, and hope to talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.